Good afternoon, everyone. Today we will having a new topic to discuss, and that is the program outcomes and student learning outcomes, which will be presented by Group 1, and that is us. But before we start, let me show you the reporters for today. I am Liberty H. Delavino, and I will be the first one to explain what is the program outcomes and student learning outcomes.
But first, let us know the learning outcomes for this topic. First, clarify the program outcomes for teacher education. Next, distinguish the 6 levels of knowledge under the cognitive domain, and also discuss the psychomotor categories in the psychomotor domain of objectives, contributed by Simpson, Dave, and Harrow. Another one is discuss the 6 levels of learning objectives in the affective domain arranged hierarchically. And lastly, discuss Kendall's and Manzano's new taxonomy. So, the introduction is, in this chapter, we will distinguish program outcomes from learning outcomes. And learning outcomes come in 3 different domains: cognitive, psychomotor, and affective. We will also be introduced to Kendall's and Manzano's 5 levels of processing information, mental procedures, and psychomotor procedures. Now let's talk about program outcomes and student learning outcomes. So the shift of focus in education from content to student learning outcomes has changed teachers' instructional perspective. In the past, teachers often heard about their concern to finish their subject matter before the end of the term, maybe because of the number of their students or failure to clarify the desired learning outcomes. Teachers' concern for outcomes was secondary to the completion of the planned content for the subject. In short, teachers were more content-centered than outcomes-centered. But the new educational perspective requires teachers to visualize the ideal graduates 3 or more years after graduation and right after completion of the program. Example, graduation time as is stated in institutional outcomes and program outcomes. So the Commission on Higher Education, the body that regulates higher education in the Philippines, in its Memorandum Order Number 20, Section 2014, requires the following program outcomes for all higher education institutions: the ability to A. Articulate and discuss the latest development in the specific field of practice. B. Effectively communicate orally and in writing using both English and Filipino. C. Work effectively and independently in multidisciplinary and multicultural terms. And D. Act in recognition of professional, social, and ethical responsibility. And E. Preserve and promote Filipino historical and cultural heritage. Some program outcomes are based on types of higher education institutional or HEI, because this determines the focus and purpose of the HEI. For example, graduates of professional institutions demonstrate a service orientation in one's profession. Next, graduates of college participate in various types of employment, development activities, and public discourses, particularly in response to the needs of the communities one service. And graduates of universities participate in the generation of new knowledge or in research and development projects. And graduates of state universities and colleges must, in addition, have the competencies to support national, regional, and local development plans.
There's a big difference between education before and today's education, as we have understood that the focus of education in today's teaching was on the student learning outcomes rather than the content or subject matter. Educators now has a new and clear instructional perspective. They were far from before as a teacher content-centered because they are now more focused on learner outcomes. As they were required to visualize the ideal graduates after completion of the program, they were provided with a clear, detailed, and effective program outcomes that would help the learner develop their skills, attitude, and knowledge more effectively as they continue their profession or as an individual citizen. So you see, teachers now are more into assessing if the student learned the lesson well, and they were not just there to teach, but rather to encourage and motivate more the student to have a positive and effective learning outcomes. Now, let us welcome our next reporter as she discusses the new topic, which is the program outcomes for teacher education. Thank you for listening and God bless.
Good day to everyone. My name is Regina Carla M. Katipan, and I will be discussing the program outcomes for teacher education. In case you didn't know, the program outcomes specific to degrees are programs spelled out in the specific policies, standards, and guidelines or PSG per program or degree issued by the same commission. The following are the program outcomes for teacher education in 2017 Philippines. Also, program outcomes or student outcomes are narrower statements that describe what the students are expected to know and be able to do by the time of graduation. These relate to the knowledge or the cognitive, skills or the psychomotor, and behavior or the affective that the students must acquire through the program. And the following are the program outcomes. First is to articulate the rootedness of education in philosophical, sociocultural, historical, psychological, and political contexts. Second is to demonstrate mastery of subject matter or discipline. Third is to facilitate learning using a wide range of teaching methodologies and delivery modes appropriate to specific learners and their environments. Fourth one is to develop innovative curricula, instructional plans, teaching approaches, and resources for diverse learners. Fifth is to apply skills in the developmental and utilization of ICT to promote quality, relevant, and sustainable educational practices. Sixth one is to demonstrate a variety of thinking skills in planning, monitoring, assessing, and reporting learning processes and outcomes. Seventh is to practice professional and ethical teaching standards sensitive to the local, national, and global realities. And the last one is to pursue lifelong learning for personal and professional growth through varied experiential and field-based opportunities. And in addition, there are program outcomes that is specific to each Bachelor of Education. Bachelor of Elementary Education, CMO number 74. Bachelor of Secondary Education, major in English, Math, Filipino, Science, Social Studies, CMO number 75. Bachelor of Early Childhood Education, CMO number 76. Bachelor of Special Needs Education, CMO number 77. Bachelor of Technology and Livelihood Education, CMO number 78. Bachelor of Technical Vocational Teacher Education, CMO number 79. Bachelor of Physical Education, CMO number 80. And lastly, Bachelor of Culture and Arts Education, CMO number 82, series of 2017. And that's all. Thank you so much for listening.
Good morning everyone, my name is Nina Cartagena and today we're gonna discuss about the 3 types of learning. Believing that there were more than a type of learning, Benjamin Bloom and a committee of colleges in 1956 identified 3 domains of educational activities: the cognitive referring to mental skills, affective referring to growth in feeling or emotion or psychomotor, referring to a manual or physical skills. These terms were regarded as too technical practicing teachers, and so domains were translated to simple terms commonly used by teachers: knowledge, skills, and attitude. What is Bloom Taxonomy 1956? The framework is useful for creating a learning experience because it assists instructors in identifying, categorizing, and outlining what students are expected to learn in the course. Bloom's taxonomy, published in 1956, divided knowledge into 6 categories. The first is knowledge, remembering or retrieving previously learned material. Example: know, identify, relate, list, define, recall, memorize, repeat, record name, recognize, acquire. Comprehension, the ability to grasp or construct meaning from material. Example: restate, locate, report, recognize, explain, express, identify, discuss, describe, review, infer, illustrate, interpret, draw, represent, differentiate, conclude. Third is application, the ability to use learned material to implement material in new and concrete situations. For example is apply, relate, develop, translate, use, operate, organize, employ, restructure, interpret, demonstrate, illustrate, practice, calculate, show, exhibit, dramatize. The fourth is analysis. What is analysis? The ability to break down or distinguish the parts of materials, its components, so that its organizational structures may be better understood. For example is analyze, compare, prove, inquire, examine, contrast, categorize, differentiate, contrast, investigate, defect, survey, classify, deduce, experiment, scrutinize, discover, inspect, dissect, discriminate, separate. The fifth is synthesis, the ability to put parts together to form a coherent or unique new whole. For example is compose, produce, design, assemble, create, prepare, predict, modify, tell, plan, invent, formulate, collect, set, up, generalize, document, combine, relate, propose, develop, arrange, construct, organize, originate, divide, write, propose. And the last is evaluation, the ability to judge, check, and even critique the value of material for a given purpose. For example is judge, assess, compare, evaluate, conclude, measure, deduce, arc, decide, choose, pre-select, estimate, validate, consider, appraise, value, criticize, infer. And that's all for today, and thank you.
Good day everyone, I'm Mary Dayan Cabanig from Group 1 and my assigned topic is Anderson's and Cratwell's Taxonomy 2001. So who are Anderson and Cratwell? These gentlemen are the primary authors of the revisions to what had become known as Bloom's taxonomy, an ordering of cognitive skills. This taxonomy had permitted teaching and instructional planning for almost 50 years before it was revised in 2001. And although these crucial revisions were published in 2001, surprisingly, there are still educators who have never heard of Anderson and Cratwell or their important work in relation to Bloom's cognitive taxonomy. Both primary authors were in a perfect position to orchestrate looking at the classic taxonomy critically. They called together a group of educational psychologists and educators to help them with their revisions. Lauren Anderson was once a student of the famed Benjamin Bloom, and David Cratwell was one of Bloom's partners as he devised his classic cognitive taxonomy. Now let's get to know more about the revisions of Bloom's taxonomy. First is remembering. Remembering is recognizing or recalling knowledge from memory. Remembering is when memory is used to produce or retrieve definitions, facts, or lists, or to recite previously learned information. Second, understanding. Constructing meaning from different types of function, be they written or graphic messages or activities like interpreting, exemplifying, classifying, summarizing, inferring, or comparing, and explaining. Third is applying. Applying is carrying out or using a procedure through executing or implementing. Applying relates to or refers to situation where learned material is used through products like models, presentations, interviews, or simulation. Fourth, analyzing. Analyzing is breaking materials or concepts into parts, determining how the parts relate to one another or how they interrelate or how the parts relate to an overall structure or purpose. Mental actions included in this function are differentiating, organizing, and attributing, as well as being able to distinguish between the components or parts. When one is analyzing, he or she can illustrate this mental function by creating spreadsheets, surveys charts, or diagram or graphic presentations. Fifth, evaluating. Making judgments based on criteria and standards through checking and critiquing. Critics' recommendations and reports are some of products that can be created to demonstrate the process of evaluation. In the newer taxonomy, evaluating comes before creating as it is often a necessary part of the precursory behavior before one creates something. And lastly, creating. Putting elements together to form a coherent or functional whole. Reorganizing elements into a new pattern or structure through generating, planning, or producing. Creating requires user to put parts together in a new way or synthesize parts into something new and different, creating in a new form or product. This process is the most difficult mental function in the new taxonomy.
That's all, and thank you.